Hey everyone, it's literacy specialist Mohini. I'm joining you from cold, cozy, and rainy California, and I'm very excited for you to dive into my conversation with Fabian Grolimund, a Swiss psychologist and educator who focuses on supporting children with ADHD and learning difficulties as they become strong, independent learners. Now, if you're the parent of a child who often gets lost in their daydreams and has a huge imagination, then this conversation will probably benefit you. It's also a great conversation for you to listen to if your child has been assessed with a learning difficulty like ADHD, dysgraphia, or dyslexia.
I'm Fabian Grolimund. I'm a Swiss psychologist, and we work also in this learning difficulties field, and we are mostly specialized on the ADHD and learning problems.
All right. And I had a chance to read part of your book, Charlie, Are You Daydreaming Again? Who did you write this book for?
It's for children with ADHD or just children who daydream a lot, who have problems concentrating from, I think, age 7 to about 10, 11.
Right. And what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, as I told, we are working a lot with children with ADHD, and we have seen that in Switzerland and Germany there are a lot of books for boys
Yes.
who are more hyperactive, impulsive, and there was just not one single book for girls. And we had a lot of clients who were just daydreaming kids, inattentive kids, also a lot of girls. They are also underdiagnosed in Switzerland. They just float under the radar. And so we wanted to make something for them.
Yes, that's the same here in America. Boys get diagnosed for special needs and learning difficulties um, more appropriately than girls, right?
Yeah.
I would love to hear the story about a girl who maybe you've read the book with or has read the book and how that made an impact on her.
Okay. So what a lot of kids told us is that they really can, they see themselves in Lotte.
Yeah.
And normally we tell parents that they should read the story to their child, not just the child alone. And that sparks a lot of conversations.
Mm.
And so there was this one girl who just said that her mother, she really just said, but that's me, the mother of this Charlie girl in the book. That's exactly me. And
Yes.
that was just wonderful to have this conversation. How are we treating each other? How do you react if I forget my homework or I come home with a bad grade? And that's a thing we've heard a lot about the book, that it just sparks these discussions. And then not only the children see themselves in these characters, but also the parents. And I
Absolutely.
think that's a first thing, just to get a better understanding, so that a lot of parents told me it was a bit the first time, because it's written in this view of Charlie, the little rabbit, the daydreaming protagonist, that these children really suffer.
Yeah, I think it's so important for children to be able to see themselves as the main characters in the stories that they read. So when I started reading this book, I thought like, wow, this would be a really good book because I primarily work with parents and provide them with activities and resources to do with their kids. I just thought like, wow, this would be a really great book for a parent to read aloud to a brand new reader, or for if there's a child who can already read books like The Magic Tree House, a child who can already read simple chapter books, it would be a good book to read for parents and kids to read together. Because when children see themselves as the main character, then they believe that they can be the main character in their own life, right?
Yes, and also because this Charlie, she struggles a lot at the
Yeah.
beginning. It's a bit hard to read. But there's hope. She learns strategies, and that was the other part. We didn't just want to write a book about ADHD and what is it to have ADHD. It was also about strategies which are really useful, and we wanted to hide them like little gems or secrets, build them into the story so that children can hope that Charlie will get something useful, and they are really motivated to try these strategies.
Yeah, I was talking to a parent yesterday who came home from, from a specialist's office with a list of strategies. And she said, I tried them, they didn't work. He got upset. And I think that um, a book can be maybe a more engaging way to teach and learn accommodations and strategies compared to like, oh, I've got like a printed list. Let me try this out.
Yes, absolutely. Because we just took strategies which are evidence-based, which are well known,
Mhm.
and it was more about making them attractive. For example, if-then plans, if we want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah.
That's quite a simple strategy for children. If you want to reach a goal,
Mhm.
you ask yourself, what should I do in which situation? For example, children with ADHD, they forget a lot of stuff or they just leave them behind. And so you ask, what would I have to do to think about that? For example, if a child often forgets the homework or comes home and there's nothing in his journal, you ask a child, how does your teacher do that? Does she write it on a board or just tell you what to do? And for example, if the teacher writes homework on a board, you make this if-then plan. If my teacher is writing the homework on the board, then I immediately grab my journal and I write it down. It's quite simple, but it's that's often the case that children who are inattentive, they just don't get these situational cues that they should act now. So you make a plan and you imagine the situation. For example, in the book, there's this Uncle Louis coming,
Mhm.
visiting her, and Lotte is in her bed, and he tells her the story about you're in school, your teacher is writing down the homework on the board. What do you tell yourself? Yes, exactly. If she's writing it down, I will immediately grab my journal, write it down. So you do this several times until it's really a vivid picture.
Yeah, I think that's a really like clear, easy to understand strategy. And what I like is that you're empowering the child to be more successful at school. I think sometimes the work that like specialists and tutors do outside of school can feel very separated from the work in school.
Mhm.
So I like that you're teaching strategies to help them integrate more in school and be more successful at school. I also like that about the story because we can clearly see the character at home. Even on the cover, you can see what it looks like when the character is trying to do homework at home, and then how the character feels at school. I think that for me, like I really value strong parent-teacher relationships. And I think,
Yes, and then there was
yeah,
very often a problem. We've seen that children with ADHD, they they work a lot at home because they miss a lot at school.
at
So
school,
that
exactly.
was very important for us. What can we do so that the child will pay more attention at school to have less to do at home?
Yeah, because there's so much time and instruction happening at school. So to allow kids to access that better can
Yeah.
really benefit them. Um,
Yeah, there's one. The main thing in the book is this wolf's eye.
okay, tell us
So
more.
Charlie, she meets a wolf in the forest.
Mhm.
She's quite desperate
Yeah.
because she's got so much homework to do, and she meets this wolf, and she is at first she thinks he will eat me, but they become friends, and this wolf becomes a mentor. And she's quite special, this she-wolf. She is just like one with the woods. And she tells Charlie that this is the secret of the wolves, that they train to be just in the here and now and be one with a task. And that's the wolf's eye.
That's such a
And
powerful metaphor.
yeah, Charlie desperately wants to learn this and do a training about that. But I think that's a thing we use a lot, a metaphor for being concentrated. Because if you tell children with ADHD that they have to concentrate or focus, for them it's like a critique. It's just
Yeah.
they hear that all the time. They
Mhm.
hate it, and so we just wanted to have this image, a metaphor, which is strong and attractive. And Charlie learns to tell herself wolf's eye on to get in this focused mode. We recommend not to overuse it,
Mm.
just to try it out for 5-10 minutes doing homework. And that is what Charlie does. When she starts to do homework, she's just telling herself, now for 10 minutes, wolf's eye on and focus, and then
Yes.
take a break. And that's one thing we train with children, just to have these little moments, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, focused work, 2 or 3 times, and then we tell them or we talk to the teachers that if they did that, they don't have to do all the homework. It's more about quality and not about quantity.
Absolutely. Kids need to feel safe, to feel ready to learn. And if they've heard, like, you know, you need to focus more for the last few years of their life from parents, teachers, other adults, then that can feel like an insult. It can be triggering. So, using that metaphor, the wolf's eye, to get the child focused can be such a more positive way. Be like, this is different from what you've heard before. This is different from what you've done before.
Yeah, absolutely. And children with ADHD, they like new stuff. So
Yeah.
that's it's easier. And what I find very effective is if parents and teachers start just to see that and give feedback on it. I've seen you used wolf's eye. You've been focused for 10 minutes. And I think that's very important for children to get back their self-efficacy. I can do it. Perhaps it's harder for me than for other children, but I can do it. I did it several times, and the adults in my life, they see it. And yes, that's much more motivating than always be criticized.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you're providing these evidence-based tools in a book because at least here, like working with a specialist, a psychologist, one-on-one can be really expensive and is it inaccessible for most families. So what happens is like in the school districts that are already struggling, um, or it's the families within the school districts that are already struggling that don't have access to specialists and psychologist support. So I think like the book is a really great tool that is financially accessible, right? Um, but I do want to step back to, you were telling us a couple of the stories in the book. So what was the process of writing the book like for you?
Yeah, at first we just really wanted to write a small book. And it got longer and longer, and
Yeah.
now it has 240 pages. There are
Yeah.
a lot of pictures, so it's not that much, but that was a bit surprising to us as it
Okay.
happened because we've seen that with children it's important to work really for a longer time on this subject.
Okay.
And if you just have a little story, that's nice to have. That's perhaps nice to have a better
Yeah.
understanding. But if you really want to change something, it's better if you have a longer story you can read over a few weeks and always stay focused on this process on these strategies.
Yeah, so there's a reason that you chose the chapter book format,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
longer
So
book.
you can read a chapter every evening and have little discussions about it and try things out.
Yeah, can you tell, so do you and Stephanie write together? What is your process for working on the book together?
Yeah, we really sit side by
Yeah.
side.
Okay, that's
Somebody's
great. Yeah.
typing and yeah.
Is there maybe like one story you can tell us about a time that you've been working on the story together, about, what scene you were working on, how it went?
Yeah, perhaps what's interesting, we normally work in cafes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we just meet in a cafe
Yeah.
and we write for an hour and then we change
Mhm.
cafes. While we are walking to the other cafe, we are talking about the
Yeah.
story, about problems, and then we sit down again. And I think that's funny because that's a very good strategy for people with ADHD,
Tell
also for students, because children with ADHD, they are underactivated in their prefrontal cortex. They get bored very
Yeah.
quickly, and there are a lot of studies which show that it's very helpful for them if you raise this activation level, and you can do that by listening to music while you're studying, for example,
Okay.
or by taking a walk.
Yeah.
So what I do with my children, for example, if they have to
Yeah.
study for a test,
Mhm.
we talk a bit about it. We are going through the materials and then we go for a walk.
Okay.
And if they have, for example, they have to learn English, I ask my son, what is the next test about?
Mhm.
Which grammar lessons?
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me more about it? Can you make an example? And your teacher, he likes or she likes um, the exceptions.
Yeah.
So do you know some exceptions? Which words are hard? For example, if it's about the past, it's
Mhm.
talked, but it's go went. Yes,
Yeah.
perfect. Do you have another example? And that's a thing I used a lot when I was a student. So I
Okay.
was reading about biology or history.
Mhm.
I just read a little part and then I asked myself, what did I read? I compared it and then I went for a walk and I tried to remember as much as I could.
So
And
during the
that's,
walk, you're thinking about what you just
yeah, I was just going
processing
to
it.
for a walk with my dog and then I asked myself, what did I read?
Mhm.
What will the teacher ask about that?
Yeah.
And free recall, that's almost the best learning strategy there is. If you just try to think about it and for example, at first, perhaps you don't remember a lot.
Mhm.
And if you find one thing, you will find another. And it's amazing how much you can remember after a few minutes.
That's
And
a great
that's when, yeah, that's really the best strategy. If you want to, I do this today too. If I really want to know what I've read a few months later, I always use this strategy.
Yeah, I feel like I listen to educational podcasts a lot. So
Hmm.
that's a good strategy, like to just switch off the music or to um be in silence and think about it. Like, what did I actually learn from that? Do I need to listen to it again? Um,
Yeah, yeah, it's much more effective to just listen something once and think about it and try to remember, then just listen to it a second time.
so I primarily work directly with parents, and one of the things that comes up is like, my child will never want to learn from me, or my child will always struggle against me. It sounds like
Hmm.
you've been able to become like a learning partner with your kids. How have you managed to kind of balance the desire to say a lot more, because I'm sure you have like a lot of knowledge that you want to impart on them, and just like create a positive learning relationship?
Yeah. um, That's quite a big field because we have the same thing. We are working with parents a lot, and homework
Yeah.
struggles
Okay.
are a big subject. And one thing I always tell parents: never struggle about homework. Just avoid the conflicts.
Okay.
Um, because if you have conflicts during homework,
Mhm.
these feelings, they are connected to learning. For
Mhm.
example, the child learns learning is stressful. I've got a good relationship with my parents,
Yeah.
but if I do homework, it gets worse.
Mhm.
And so children just want to avoid it.
Mhm.
And now it's easier said than done. But often, if we want to do homework with our children or prepare them for a test, we are very narrow-minded. We just want that
To get it done.
these worksheets get done.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a really important thing to tell yourself that the relationship with my child is more important than this worksheet.
Mm.
And if I get the feeling that it's becoming tense,
Mhm.
I will just say we'll take a break. I think now it's getting tense. I don't want to have a fight over homework.
Yeah.
We are taking a break, and you try it later.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't work for today, well,
Yeah.
then it doesn't work. But if you just get the priorities straight, if you tell yourself, my main focus as a parent is to have a good relationship,
Yeah.
and that's key. And if I get the feeling that this relationship is getting worse during homework, we just take a break. It's so helpful. And often it's a child that comes to you after 15, 20 minutes, and they just say, now we can try again.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, just don't force it. That's my advice on that.
Yeah, don't force it. Like when I'm working with a brand new reader, and if they're just having a bad day, then we might just use that time to read aloud, or I might read aloud a book that day, instead of forcing it or pushing it. I think that that's just such a good recommendation. Don't push it when the feeling of resistance starts or when it becomes a struggle. But at the same time, have a routine so the child knows, like, hey, we'll probably try again tomorrow.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And for reading, for example, I found it very helpful. My daughter, she struggled a bit while learning to read,
yeah.
and they always told her, we read together. You can always tell me if I should read. Um,
So
so you can, if you're tired after one sentence, you tell me. it's it's your part now, that. So just don't push it too far. It's better to have these short sessions,
absolutely.
3 minutes, 5 minutes. And what she liked a lot is I wanted her to be able to read the short words. So if there was a long word, she just could tell me, that's your word, and I read it.
Yes, I think that's
These
great.
little things to make it a bit easier for the child.
Absolutely. Like kids are natural learners. Kids want that one-on-one time with their parents, right? That's so special. So if they
Hmm.
are, if you become their partner in
Yeah.
learning and they know that, oh, like I don't need to pretend in front of my dad or I don't need to pretend in front of my mom, I can be relaxed with them, then you're going
Hmm.
to be more successful supporting them. Like one of my favorite things is to just say, like, give me a thumbs down when you don't know a word. And then I will
Yeah.
just tell them and try instead of trying to teach every single word that the child doesn't know. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
we teach like one thing at a time, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also quite useful just to ask sometimes a child, what would make it easier or more fun for you? What could I change? So you get some feedback too.
And what about for the child who has maybe been behind for 2 or 3 years and maybe they've just become really used to not knowing, used to guessing. they feel like, oh, I'm bad at writing or I'm bad at reading, what's your approach usually in that situation?
I think it's very important to admit to the child that this is really hard.
Hmm.
And a child can be sad about it. For example, if sometimes children tell us, I'm stupid, I can't do
Yeah.
that. And very often parents, they just can't stand this. They just, no, you have to tell yourself, I can do it, and so on. Be positive. And that's not useful for children.
Mhm.
It's much more useful for them if you can see their struggle, for example. And if you say, yes, I know these feelings, and I've had similar experiences, and sometimes it's really hard. And
Yes.
then they open up.
Yeah. So I think having a growth mindset towards yourself and saying, like, I can be my child's best teacher, I can be their learning partner is really great. And when you do use these strategies, like being aware of your child's feelings, allowing them to feel however they're feeling, and showing a lot of support, like you can see success. Um, what is your vision? So you're very committed to supporting children with learning difficulties. What is your big vision for the next few years?
Oh, that's difficult. But there, we are working a lot with schools in Switzerland.
Okay.
Yeah, and what we do a lot is talk about how you learn and teach teachers to really get into this and show children how can you use strategies to learn better, faster, and so on. And the other thing is what we just talked about. Um, we talk a lot with teachers about emotions during learning. And I think that's so important. So many children are just anxious about learning,
Mhm.
stressed, and that's okay. That's part of learning,
Yes.
but you have to be able to talk about it, and that's a wonderful thing. For example, if even in a classroom, children can say, I'm nervous about having a speech in front of the class, and there are others who tell them, yes, for me it's the same, and the teacher says, yes, that's normal. It
Mhm.
takes a lot of courage. And yeah, I think if you can see frustrations, insecurity as part of the learning process, and you know you're not alone with these feelings, you don't have to hide them. You are in a community where you can share them. It makes it a lot easier.
Yes. And I think that's a really powerful message to end on. If you're the parent of a child who might be able to relate to Charlie, then I would definitely get this book and read it with your kids. Like I said, if they are brand new readers, it might be a nice book to read aloud to them and to discuss with them. And if they're already reading simple chapter books like Magic School Bus, then this might be a nice book to read together. If you are in America, then this is available on Amazon, right, Fabian? And is there anywhere else where people can get the book?
I think at the moment it's just Amazon.
Okay, got it. Well, thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you too.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Now, if you're interested in getting Fabian and Stephanie's book, the link is in the show notes. If you would like to support your child with reading and writing at home, then the link is in the show notes for Literacy Playground. Through Literacy Playground, I create customized reading and writing programs for children, including children with learning difficulties. Lastly, if you have been thinking about writing a book, but have been too scared to get started, then follow Fabian's advice, find a person you love, and go to a coffee shop.